We'll go. Okay, so you should get notification on that. And what I'm going to do is screen share, because I've got some slides to show you tonight. So if I can get rid of that bit. Right, here we go. If I can just ask, if you've got background noise, if someone else is watching the telly or whatever, then please just keep muted. The rest of you, because the numbers aren't so high tonight, it would be really great to have you unmuted. I'd love you to jump in, ask questions as we go, because otherwise it's going to be my voice for a whole hour. Plus, I'm going to ask you to do stuff into the chat. So I do want this to be a little bit interactive. And we're going to start off with a question. Not anything to do with selling, just in your life as a person, what are you really good at? So if you're really good at tap dancing, put that into the chat. Think of something you're really good at and put it into the chat. I presume you mean talking, Tanya, rather than talko, which you've typed. Clearly isn't typing that you're really good at. Someone's got TV in the background, guys. It is going to be really distracting for people. If you could mute if you've got TV, that'd be great. Ruth, don't be picky about the really good at. Just pick something you're good at. It's all good. Making people laugh. I love that. Okay. Procrastinating. That's okay.
Well,
That's a bit of a negative, Natalie. You must pick something you're good at. Cooking a roast, Marie. I'm on my way. Baking, Hazel. We'll have pudding at your house. Creative, helping other people, listening. Nice. There we go. Ruth, you're good at roasts. Okay, so here's the next question. How did you get to be really good at that thing? Okay, let's have a look at your answers in the chat. Practice, trial and error, asking other people, reading about it, repeat practice, and doing it, perseverance, trial and error, watching my mum, so learning from others, by being silly and letting people laugh whether I tried or not. Love it, Deb. Just enjoying your life, basically, then. And it just got infectious. Excellent. So you're probably making the link completely with what I'm doing here. You know, when it comes to selling products, all of the same things apply that you've just put in. You get really good at something by trial and error, failing forward, dusting yourself down, picking yourself up and trying again, watching other people, reading up on the subject, practice, and more practice, and generally doing it. So if a job is worth doing, it is worth doing badly at first. Nobody, I think, is born absolutely brilliant at all areas of sales. I think there are some people who are naturally good sellers, but they would still need to fine tune and tweak their practice. So, you know, let's commit together to practice and get good at this. Okay, so here's another one for you to consider. How would you define selling? Put some suggestions into the chat, that'd be great. Connecting a solution with a problem. I like that idea, Hazel. Identifying people's needs and making recommendations for them. That's a really nice way of thinking about sales, isn't it? Answering a need, sharing what you like and what you love. All of those are really nice definitions of selling. Here's one that I found, and one that I find quite helpful. Meeting the need of somebody, that somebody has with a product or a service that you possess. So if you're meeting somebody's needs, if you're helping them, if you're encouraging people by sharing what you love, well, we're okay then, because we're all happy to be selling, because that's a really positive angle on something that perhaps has negative connotations. So what I've planned tonight is relevant for all of us. So whether you're a therapist who's wanting to reach out to clients or not, and we're just talking about all the general ways in which we sell to customers, let's think of the word selling as really positive. You know, somebody sold you the idea of coming on this training. No money was transacted, but actually you bought into an idea because it met a need that you had, and you told me why at the beginning. So we're actually selling ideas, we're selling concepts to people all the time. And in Neil Child Remedies Organic, obviously what we also get to do is sell product and opportunity to people all the time. And all we need to do is really get good at knowing our product and get good at the skills of how to connect the right product with the right people. Okay, so here's one for you to jot in your notes to yourself. Think of a good sales experience that you've had where you were being sold to and you found it a pleasurable experience. And when you thought about that, just have a think about what was good about it. Why was it positive? What were the elements of that were pleasurable? And just make some notes to yourself on that one. I'll just give you a minute to do that. And when you've made some notes to yourself of what made that a good experience, put some in the chat so that we can share each other's, because quite often I find it helpful just to see what other people have written down. And I think, yeah, that's me as well. What makes a good sales experience good? Because if we've been on the receiving end of that as a customer, that's what we want to recreate for our customers, isn't it? So what was it about that experience that was positive? Put some things in the chat that you've written down.
Good.
So Deb's put, I was treated well, I was listened to, complimented, given attention and free stuff. Love it. I was wondering what you were purchasing, Deb. The assistant help, pardon?
It was herbal tea from Bird and Blend in Bristol.
Love it. That's really nice. Okay. The assistant helped me out through lots of options to leave me with just a few options to choose from. Really simplified everything. Took away the overwhelm. Love it. Enthusiasm. Okay, where are we at? Being listened to rather than talked at. Someone who was engaging, wasn't overbearing, asked open-ended questions. Awesome. Right, so now think about a situation that was less positive. What was it about it that you didn't appreciate? And try and make that specific, because we all know that bad sales is about being pushy and that kind of stuff, but try and think of a specific situation and how it made you feel, and what were the elements of that were just not appreciated. Love that, Catherine. You're buying paint and they knew their stuff. Love it. Okay, so now a negative sales experience, because we want to do the opposite of that, don't we? And then when you've made some notes to yourself, put some thoughts in the chat so we can compare notes on the not so marvelous experiences that we've had of sales. Interesting. No eye contact. It wasn't about anything that was said or the product. It was about the body language of the person. Kept talking to somebody else, just pointed to where the goods were. Yeah, so impersonal, isn't it? Pushy or overbearing. The last car you bought. I'm surprised you bought it, Helen. Wanted immediate commitment, right, Anne? So they rushed you through the process, probably driving their own agenda. Okay, keep those thoughts coming in the chat. So, okay, here's an interesting idea. What would you say is the toughest kind of product to sell? I don't mean in our Neal's Yard Remedies range. I mean, in general, what would be the hardest thing to sell? And I've got some ideas here. One that doesn't clearly address a customer's need. One that's the cost of it far outweighs the benefits. If it's too expensive compared with the benefits that it's going to bring. And lastly, one that doesn't offer what it promises to deliver to the customer. So actually, we're okay then, because our products and our host rewards and our joining opportunity don't fit into any of those categories. So that means we've got the opportunity then to really fine-tune our own skills with a product that's going to do the talking for itself. It's going to sell itself to some extent, and any skills we want to add to that are going to benefit us because we've got a product that's already doing some of the legwork. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through some of the skills that I think are really beneficial to us as salespeople, which are initially, they are soft skills. So they're skills that pervade they make a difference in any sales transaction. We're going to come on to the harder skills and the more practical elements of being a consultant afterwards. But what I want to do now is spend a bit of time whipping through 10 soft skills that I think add a very subtle difference to the DNA of your vibe, your transactional vibe when you are promoting product to customers. So let's start off with number one, communication skills. So, you know, to be honest, developing the art of communication is a skill that impacts relationship on any level, not just on selling. But I think particularly in selling, sometimes we can be a little bit of a tendency to download information or to be over enthusiastic with overload. Like some of you mentioned, that's a negative experience you had in the sales situation. And we forget to just hold up and let there be a conversation. And in a social scene, you know, I was taught from a fairly young age that the best way to start a conversation was to ask a question of the other person. And that is absolutely the best way to start a selling transaction. So developing your skills in the art of conversation, I don't know, as you're making notes, put a smiley face next to that if you think you're actually quite good at the art of conversation, because there'll be some things in these top 10 soft skills that you think, actually, I think I'm okay with that. I think that just comes fairly naturally to me. If you don't think you're very good at the art of conversation, you might just want to put a star next to that one, because it is a key one for developing relationship, building personal connection, and then, as we know, that leads to the other results that we get. So in communication, what we don't want is a script. When you're doing your online workshops, if you're talking to a client after a treatment, this isn't about kind of pressing play on recommendation of the products that you've just been talking about. This is a conversation where you're engaging, as some of you put in some of the chat, you're engaging with where the person is at and then drawing them on into choices that they're going to make for your products along the way. So it isn't a downloaded information, and we don't work from scripts. Start with a question and let the conversation flow. And actually, in the art of conversation, the other aim is that you're going to receive at least as much information as you give. And we're going to come on to that in a minute in terms of listening to what's said. But if you've got that conversation coming, then actually listening to what the other person is saying is going to give you as much information to help you establish what that person's needs or desires are, as your own information about a product is going to be useful to them. So the transaction is mutually useful in both directions. And then within the sales technique of communication, I think checking is an area that sometimes gets missed out. So actually keeping the conversation on track and interactive. If you ask a question midway, then that will help to bring response from more reluctant conversationalists, but also it helps to keep the conversation based on what it was that you started the process for. So if I give you an example, if you sit down with a customer at the end of a workshop and you're helping them make their order choices, then you might say, as a checking technique, you might say after a bit of chat, so are the products that I've suggested to you the sorts of products you're looking for? Or have the suggestions that I've made fitted within the budget that you had in mind tonight? That kind of question just helps to keep a subtle reminder of the fact that this is about taking their order and finding the right products for them. This one I find particularly useful if I've got a very chatty person who's wandered off telling me, about their daughter or a product that they tried that was from a different brand, and a checking question will help bring the conversation back to the products we've just tried this evening, because otherwise the conversation might wander off all around the houses. So there we are. First selling skill, communication skills. Here's the second, active listening. Now, active listening, as I used to say to my kids when they were a bit younger, is not waiting for somebody to stop talking so that you can. That's not listening. Active listening really, really does build trust. And so what you want to do is ask open questions to get the conversation started. And an open question is one that doesn't have yes or no as the answer. So have you enjoyed the products tonight? Yes, they've been lovely. Full stop. That ends the conversation. If you ask an open question, you might say something like, so which of the products did you most enjoy this evening? So do you see how that is going to open up conversation much more, and also give you much more information back that's useful for you then in meeting that person's need? And then in active listening, what you're doing is listening really intentionally and then continuing to ask questions for even more information. So if, for instance, somebody is saying, your open question might be, do you have a specific concern with your, or what would you say your main concerns are with your skin? And they start to talk, and they might say, oh, I don't know, signs of aging, and in the winter it gets more dry. Can I ask, so your further question might be something like, can I ask you what products you're using currently? So you're not just stopping at the point where they've given you the answer to the first question, you're drilling down another layer to get more information. And all of that conversation is giving you information, but it is also building relationship and building trust. Listening intentionally also, so that you remember what they've said to you, but also so that you can then later offer recommendations based on what they've said. So you're in a much better position to be able to recommend specific products if you haven't just waited for them to stop talking so that you can. So active listening is really taking in the information that you're on the receiving end of. Put a smiley face next to number 2 if you think you're good at active listening, and a star next to it if you think, I reckon that is an area I need to work on. Another soft skill, collaboration.
Sian, can I just say about the active listening?
Yeah, go for it.
Because it can be a difficult one to get a handle on, but sometimes if you're not sure, or maybe they've talked a lot and given you a lot of information, sometimes it can be good to reflect some of it back to them and just say, okay, so what I've heard you say is, and then, you know, if it's to do with skincare, as it will be in our case, you know, that you've got this and you use this and this is how you do it and blah, blah, blah. And this is what you're looking for, or whatever it is you've talked about. And then they can go, oh yeah, well, it was that and that, but that bit wasn't quite that, it's this. And it's good as well. If you're worried about forgetting things, then you just ask them again.
That's brilliant. So reflecting back, and also that comes to what I was saying earlier about checking. So from what you're saying, actually you're looking to change your whole skincare routine, or from what you're saying, your main concern is such and such. Is that right? Have I got that right? Absolutely. So reflecting back what they've said. Great technique with friends, husbands, teenage children, best friends, you know, all sorts. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Hazel.
Okay.
So collaboration. I think first off, collaboration with each other. So learning from each other, chatting about selling, you know, having conversations about sales situations, not just with your upline leader in a particular coaching call or focus call, but with your peers, with our peers as consultants. I often have conversations with Xenia. She is somebody that I am good friends with inside the business and outside the business. And as we walk, we chat about different approaches to things. We might talk about selling techniques, recruiting techniques, that kind of thing. So it really is helpful to get another perspective on things. But actually within selling with a customer, what you want to do is collaborate with that customer in the conversation so that you're working together. So that your recommendations fit with what they're saying. So you're kind of stepping in alongside them. If you imagine visually, they're on a journey. They might, for instance, be deciding that they'd like to change their everyday products to Neelshad Remedies. You might be having a conversation with them last week when we had our everyday essentials offers, the bundles that were going on. Yeah, that is something I'd like to do. I'd like to change my products that I use every day to Neelshad Remedies. So how do you collaborate with that person in the desire that they've expressed? You might say something like, you know, since you'd like to change your products every day to MYR, would shower gel or shampoo be your next choice, do you think? Because you're already using the hand wash. Or maybe an even more open question, you know, as you want to change your products to every day, what everyday item would you like to swap first or next? So actually that collaboration is very much about need and then solution. But the collaborative part of that is meaning that you are in conversation, making suggestions based on what they've told you, rather than you driving your agenda with products that you think that they should be using, basically. Okay, another soft skill here is self-motivation. And this is less about your conversation with customers and more about what goes on in your head. As self-employed salespeople, I think this is a really, really important one. So we are responsible individually for choosing what we want to be better at and developing ourselves. You know, in the content of today, I needed to be motivated to first of all, collect the information together, draw on the experience I've had, be willing to think, do you know what, that's a really good reminder. And I'm in this with you. If I just thought, oh, well, you know, I've been doing this long enough, there isn't anything for me to learn, my self-motivation takes a nosedive. And also, actually, I think sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves. So, well, I'll never be good at this. I've never been a salesperson. Those kind of negative sentences that we sometimes feed ourselves in our head will reduce our desire to better and improve our performance. With self-motivation as well, it's not just choosing to do that, but to keep doing it. So just to think, no, I'm not expecting to be perfect. I'm going for practice rather than perfection. on a day-to-day basis. And in your self-motivation, the reality of that comes down to, after each conversation with a customer, just have a little conversation with yourself. How did that go? What did I do really well? Oh, do you know what? I think I did too much talking. I want to change that next time. Not, I did too much talking. Oh, for goodness sake, I failed again. I'm so rubbish at this. Do you see the difference? One of them is going to motivate you to go on improving, and the other one basically is you beating yourself up. So, you know, staying motivated in wanting to improve, really key. Number 5, you will need to be a problem solver when you're selling. So just absolutely expect no's and deal with them in your own head. You know, it doesn't mean that the person who says no to you doesn't want to make a purchase at the end of a workshop, doesn't want to join, doesn't want to host, isn't interested in organic. Bizarre though that might seem to those of us who love this brand, it doesn't mean they don't like you, doesn't mean they hate you. It doesn't mean the world is going to stop spinning. It just means they don't want to say yes to whatever it was that you were offering them at the time. And so I think, you know, when you have the conversation with yourself, as per the self-motivation, think, did I handle that well? Did I set myself up to fail? If the answer to that is yes, then okay, I'm going to put my big girl pants on and make changes for next time, dust myself down, pick myself up. And if actually it was like, there wasn't anything about that I set up to fail, they just wanted to say no, then move on and leave it there.
And also sometimes, Sian, I think if the situation is appropriate, it's not always, but if it's appropriate, I was just thinking about you with my nana again. and how I have taken that as an inspiration on a couple of occasions where I've had a couple of people, I think actually both occasions it's been with our facial oils, and they've said, oh no, I couldn't put a facial oil on, oh no, that would be horrible and greasy. And you know, that kind of situation, or somebody who says, oh, you know, I've never found anything that sits right on my skin. I'm like, right, let's go.
And to find something.
Yeah, exactly, but not in a, that's why I say if the situation is appropriate, because I never want that to be a pushy thing. If the situation feels right and I feel as though that relationship is there and that they'd be up for, you know, doing a bit more sort of sampling in that way, then you know, it can be good.
Absolutely. And I, you know, sometimes when we've talked about being over enthusiastic, I've said don't be Tigger, where you tig about somebody into joining and they don't really know why they've joined. On this occasion, you can kind of tap into your inner Tigger, be positive, be a solution finder, a problem solver. It can actually be really nice to win somebody round. But one of the things we're going to need to do in that is to learn to meet objections, as they're called in sales. So those might be apprehensions, there might be questions or hesitations, there might be confusion. You know, like Ruth said in the chat, it might be overwhelm. Or I don't think I can choose because there's just too much available. That kind of issue, you want to meet that head on. And I don't mean in a confrontational way, just think, great, this is where I get to practice finding creative solutions to this problem. So if Ruth and I had been chatting after a workshop and she had said to me, I don't think I'm going to place an order tonight, thank you, because I've just got too much choice. I'm quite tired now, I've had a really busy day. Rather than, as I would have done early as a consultant, I'd have just gone, oh, okay then, and kind of scurried off to the next person. I would say to her, I would love to be able to help you with that overwhelm. Let's break it down, because it would be a shame to miss out if we can actually simplify this process. Would you like me to do that? Notice I end it with a question. And if she says, no, I've actually got a splitting headache and I need to go, let her go, because obviously at that point it would be pushing it too far. But quite often with a problem solving perspective, you can win someone round. And as you said, Ruth, in the chat, it was actually that person's ability to reduce the overwhelm and bring it down to a few more simple solutions that was a nice experience and resulted in sales for that person. Okay, and then thirdly, I've put on here, become a skilled negotiator in your problem solving. So you're offering choices that work for you and the customer that you're speaking to. And the example I've given here is hosting or being a customer. So let's say, Debs, you're a client coming out of a therapy, a treatment that I've just given you, which is hilarious because I'm not a therapist, but I'm trying to give around lots of different examples here. And I might say, open-ended question, which of the products that I used on you, Deb, did you particularly like? And she says, I like all of it. I want everything in the range. I'm completely hooked. And that is the kind of thing you'd say, Deb, isn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah.
She's an all or nothing kind of girl.
Yeah.
So I would say to her, you know, I might be thinking, great, this person might want to host or she might want to join instead of just being a customer, because in my head, that makes total sense. If you want everything in the range, why would you just be a customer? But if I offer hosting or joining to Deb and she says, no, for whatever reason, I absolutely can't do those things. And I would quite like to have had a host because I could do with some extra bookings in my diary for September. The skilled negotiator would say, totally fine. You know, I need to do my job and tell you that those are options that are available to you, but you can stay being a customer. And actually what some of my customers do, I'd be a bit cheeky and just stretch it a bit. What some of my customers do is when they come to things that I'm running, they bring a friend or two if they want a bit of company. So I've kind of stretched her into being half a host, but the negotiation is really not driving my agenda of her being a host or joining. It's about me just going, oh, okay, well, we can work around that. Because actually, for us as consultants, we need people to join, we need hosts and we need customers. I don't really mind which Debs is going to fall into, so I'm happy to negotiate accordingly. So making the options totally fine, either way, whichever way they want to go, but then potentially just stretching it in a nicest possible way, pushing your luck a little. Right, the sixth soft skill that I've put down is empathy, because you will help to meet somebody's needs and you will build trust and relationship with them best if you put yourself in their shoes. And when you are understanding where they're coming from, you're going to be able to guide the conversation in a much more productive way. You'll also be able to get more information from them on any reservations that they've got, any questions. And as I've said, empathy builds relationship. If you are naturally an empathic person, probably what you're going to have to watch is not just sitting there listening to their life story. A few of you are smiling now. You know who you are. Hazel has her head in her hands at this moment. That's hilarious. Actually, for those of us who are empathic, you'll need to think, okay, I need to keep the conversation moving on because I've got another 7 customers to get round in this workshop whose orders also need to be taken in. But actually, if you're not naturally empathic, what I would suggest that you do is that you practice at the start of the conversation being curious about that person. If you can't raise the empathic emotions, raise curiosity ones, because it will really help you with your active listening and your engaging with that person, well, on every level, including the subtle ones. I think it was, what's her name? Marie, is it Marie Angelou?
Maya Angelou.
Maya Angelou, that's it, who said, people will not remember what you said or did, they will remember how you made them feel. That is absolutely true. So what is most important is the dynamic that's created between the two of you, because people don't buy from people they don't like. I was in a shop in Cornwall a couple of days ago, and there were two shop assistants in there complaining about the type of tourists that were around this summer. I mean, talk about sweeping generalisation. And of course, the shop was reasonably full of tourists at the point. And I looked at Mike and he looked at me and we raised our eyebrows and we left the shop. Now, I'm not saying I don't like those people, but what I'm saying is that was a turn off relationally for me. And as a result, I didn't want to make purchases in that shop. Alternatively, you can get loads of stuff wrong, but if somebody likes you and you've built some trust and you've engaged with their desires, you'll get away with quite a lot, and they'll probably still buy stuff. Okay, so number 7 is emotional intelligence. People naturally relate to you if you have emotional intelligence, and they will follow your guidance, whether you're brand new as a consultant or not. So what does that look like? Emotional intelligence isn't just about knowing where you're coming from, it's picking up cues from other people. So perceiving emotion. And if you're listening, if you're actively listening, it actually gives you space to notice face, body language, voice, that kind of thing. So going back to the example that I pulled out of the chat earlier about Ruth, if actually she was saying to me, I'm completely overwhelmed, I don't know what to choose, but she was saying that with some eye contact, there was a smile building slightly around her mouth, it was just generally an open thing. That's a very different body cue than if she sat not looking at me, kind of looks at me sideways, and she's got her arms crossed and her voice sounds like abrupt, let's not have this conversation. So you can take a perception of how to handle a conversation from somebody's emotional cues despite their words, because probably in the first scenario, you would be brave enough to continue that conversation with Ruth and say, well, I'd love to help you break down the overwhelm. On the second body language cues, you might not. So this is about emotional intelligence in terms of relating to other people. And then managing your emotions. So sometimes matching what you see is helpful. Now, not if they're confrontational, aggressive, bored, etc., obviously, but for instance, those of you who are particularly bouncy and sometimes tend to be a bit over enthusiastic, if you're talking to somebody who's quiet and reflective, I would suggest you tone down what is your natural tendency to be more comfortable to their vibe. So you know what your tendencies will be in conversation and what you need to adjust accordingly. If you are somebody who is quite closed as a person, you might decide you want to focus on some eye contact, some smiling. My kids laugh. We tend to spot people who have unfortunate resting faces. Do you know what I mean? There are some people who just give off vibes they don't necessarily want to give when their faces are at rest. But so if actually your resting position is quite closed rather than overzealous and over bouncy, you might want to do the opposite of what I've suggested for the bouncy ones. And one of the other elements of that, particularly for those of you who are more quiet, perhaps reflective, is to use sort of encouragers, they're called. So you'll find often that in conversation that draws you in and you think, goodness me, I've told that person loads. That person has nodded or smiled at you or said, right, yes. Those kind of things encourage us to keep talking. Conversely, if we're a little bit overzealous, then going, yeah, which basically means shut up because I've got something I want to say, is going to shut the conversation down. So, some of you are smiling. Take that point as you might need and as you see fit. So some of us show lots of emotion and some of us show very little. Which are you, and what adjustments might you want to make in the light of this emotional intelligence? It really does make a difference to the conversations that we're having with customers for both counts. Okay, whipping on. Number 8 is optimism. Be willing to see lots of unanswered messages or unwanted outcomes. I am naturally an optimistic person. Probably it would be the death of me. I am eternally optimistic. Now, I could, for instance, if I was not optimistic, have thought, I'm going to cancel that sales training because I'm probably only going to get 2 people. it's not worth the time and effort I've put in. What's the point anyway? But actually, because I'm naturally optimistic, I think it's going to be really nice to connect with the people who can make it. We're going to record it anyway, so it'll be useful for people after the event. It's always helpful to have sales training input. It'll be good to have on the team YouTube channel. So that's my version of training of what I've just said about unanswered message and unwanted outcomes. You will have lots of no's, you'll have lots of people who don't respond. You'll have workshops where the sales were a lot less than you'd hoped for, etc. Practice your optimism, because it comes down to the difference between dusting yourself down and carrying on or not. And what we don't want to do is be scuppered or stalled by a lack of optimism. So be optimistic in the face of adversity or rejection of what you're offering, and be kind to yourself. You know, if you need to take a bit of time to recharge, that's okay. But also celebrate the good stuff. Even if the sales bombed out on a workshop, think, do you know what, that's okay, because the last one I did was a cracker and I have to take the rough with the smooth. Optimism actually also reduces your stress and anxiety as well. So looking ever hopeful is good. And, you know, there are reasons for optimism, you know, without being a plot spoiler, it will be okay. And you will grow and develop and fine tune your business. And so you don't want a negative experience or a run of negative experiences to stop you in your tracks. Number 9 is integrity. Be honest and transparent in your business. If you say you're going to follow somebody up, please make sure it goes in your diary and make sure you do it. Having said that, if you've got people who you said you were going to follow up and you haven't done it, just be in touch with them. They probably haven't noticed because life's been kind of weird and crazy, and it's better than not ever being in touch again, ever. Recommend products that are a good fit for that person, not just driving your own agenda of what you want to sell. That's an important one in terms of integrity. And then get to know your products. The more you learn about the products, the more you're a product of your products, the more you'll know. But if you don't know, admit it and say, do you know what, that's a really good question, but I'm going to find out for you. People like that. They don't expect us to have all the answers. Get to know your products so you can rave about them in a workshop without necessarily referencing your cue cards every 2 minutes. But it's okay to read off a cue card as well. It's actually a really good recruiting pitch, because anybody sitting there is thinking, well, she's reading it, bless her, I could do that. Keeps your business really attainable. And most importantly, in your integrity, don't be misleading about products and what they can do. Let's be really clear on what our features and benefits are. I'm going to talk about features and benefits later, but let's not make big claims about products that aren't in line with the brand messaging that we've got.
Yeah, Shan, just I want to say on that page about integrity, I think it's really hard to sell products that I don't use. And I think it's really hard for consultants who complain that they can't sell, but they haven't tried the products themselves. So I think there's something about an integrity about actually using the products ourselves to help sell them.
Absolutely. And I think that's about a bit like your overwhelm thing. It's about breaking it down into small chunks. So if actually, for instance, over the summer, you might have invested in a couple of the body scrubs, try them both, use up the rest as testers and samples and little gifts in people's order bags, so that you know the texture, how they make you feel, you've got the aromatherapeutic benefit of them. Absolutely agree with that, Ruth. I think it isn't impossible to sell products that you haven't tried, but it is a lot harder. So absolutely wrap that around your integrity. Okay, and number 10 is growth mindset. So this is the last of the all-pervasive soft skills before we get into the hard stuff. It is incredible what can be achieved with a growth mindset. And it's also really sad to watch what is limited by a limited mindset. if you've got a self-destructive mindset, you know you will kibosh your own development. A growth mindset opens up possibilities. So let's all together in our sales techniques have belief that we are capable of strengthening our talents and acquiring new skills over time. Rome wasn't built in a day, but small changes make a big difference. Sorry about the spelling there. Understand the importance of constantly trying to improve rather than being stuck in your ways. I can't do it, or I've always done it this way, or I'm just wired like that. Those are all negative things that don't fit in a growth mindset. I'm willing to give this a go. I want to change. I want to develop in this. I'm going to take a step in the right direction to that today. Those are all growth mindset things. And as you know, what you start to think impacts the way that you behave. So yeah, seek help and input when you would benefit from it for that growth mindset stage. You know, it's been really interesting in the last 18 months. I've had so many coaching conversations with consultants who've said, I'm just struggling at the moment with positive mindset, or, you know, I just feel like I'm in a rut in my business. Just reach out to me or to somebody else that you trust who's experienced in the business, who can help you when you need a little bit of a leg up into this growth mindset. It's linked with the optimism thing, you know, positivity and a desire to move forward. All of us have days where it's difficult to find that on your own. So find someone who can hold the belief for you until you can find it again for yourself. So what I've done here is I've listed those 10 in case you missed any in your note taking. And what I'd like you to do is have a look at those and just mark off the ones on your notes as you were going. I think you did the first couple, but mark the ones that you think I'm good at that. Maybe it's helpful for you to have a score out of 10. Sometimes smiley face is a good where you know you're good at something, and a star where that's an area you want to work at. And then I'd love you to put into the chat which one that you are motivated to focus on intentionally in the next few sales transactions that you're going to have, in the light of all the stuff that I've said thus far. Which one are you going to home in on? Deb's going for number 8. Thank you, Deb. Nice messages. Growth mindset for Helen. Yeah. Problem solving. That's nice. Great. Isn't it funny with people going for different ones? Love it. Okay, so a bit of self-help in there. How are you going to do those things? You know, what do you fill your head with? For those of you who've gone, for instance, for number 4, how are you going to get more motivated? What needs to happen for you so that you can recharge, re-energize your business in that area? Okay, so I'm going to move on now to some other skills that are helpful in the process of selling, and really to think about a sales transaction like a process. So those 10 that we've just talked about are all pervasive. They, you know, it's not a process. You don't start with number 1 and work your way through, and then you get to number 10 and then the sale happens. They are soft skills that just pervade relationship and sales technique. What I've got here is a bit of a process that you would go through in a sales transaction. So whether that's straight out of the back of a treatment that you've delivered, or a conversation you're having with somebody one-to-one, or you know, taking orders after a workshop, whatever it looks like, the first place to start is understanding the needs of that person by asking open questions. So that might be, are there products that you particularly need to reorder that you're running out of? It might be, which of the products in the treatment that I've just given you did you find most delightful, or were you tempted by? It might be, would you like some help choosing your products for your order. Can I help you with your selection? So in a sales process, you start actually by asking a question, preferably an open one. The next stage of the process is, this isn't an essential, but it's one that can sometimes come in the course of conversation, because sharing the results might be something like, oh, it's interesting you were saying that, because I was talking to a customer last week and she'd used that product and she was saying that she found it really helpful because. So actually what you're doing is bringing in another customer's experience of that product and using it as a way to sell the features and benefits of that product. Sharing results might be about gathering testimonials. So if you ask your customers for feedback, the obvious place to start this now is as we sample the Women's Balance body collection. So actually getting what other people have said about this product, you can use that in your social media posts, etc. But you'll find that the more you gather testimonial, the more you'll incorporate them into sales conversations. And if you're a relatively new consultant and you haven't done much selling, or even if you're not that new, but you just haven't done much selling, you can use stories that you pick up from team pages, team trainings, conversations with other consultants, coffee and chat on a Wednesday. And we're meeting this week because I was on holiday last week. So come along to that. We often have conversations where there'll be a story that you can just take away and use in your conversations with a customer. At some point in the conversation, whilst they're choosing, you are likely to need to overcome objections and allow that conversation to happen. So if somebody says, oh, I don't know, it's a bit more than I wanted to spend, or facial oils are a little bit more expensive than I thought they were going to be, something like that, that's an objection to a purchase. You might say, what did you expect the price to be? Or can I ask whether you've come across Neelshad Remedies products before? Just let the conversation continue. Don't let the objection be the reason why the conversation stops. And then allow them time to answer. And obviously you're going to be practicing your all-pervasive active listening. So you've listened to what their reply might be. They might say, well, I've never used Neelshad Remedies products before. And to be honest, I've never used a facial oil. So would you like me to explain why our facial oils are priced at the point that they are? So instead of launching in and giving the information, again, another question asks whether they would like to receive the information. Now, if they've expressed enough interest to raise the objection about the price, they're probably interested in knowing why it's priced that way. So you're likely to get a yes answer to that question, at which point you can explain to them. Does anyone want to pitch in on what their reply would be for that? Why are our facial oils priced at the sort of price point that they are? Does anyone want to have a stab at that? Go on, give it a go. Positive mindset.
I would say they're a lot of the ingredients are done by small producers at the price, proper fair trade prices, rather than mass produced, small chemicals. There's actually a lot of the product in whatever you're selling, and so therefore, you're getting a proper product, not a little chemically thing that you might get in Superdrug or somewhere.
Okay, I love your first point in particular, Deb. The issue there is the ingredients are sourced at fair trade prices, and they are often from small growers and providers. Love that. I think if you can steer away from being negative about another brand or another store, and explain the fact that they're natural and organic ingredients as well.
Yeah, I always say that. Yeah,
the purity of the product that comes with a price point. And I quite often say, I kind of draw on my own ignorance. So I would say, before I came across Neelshad Remedies, I didn't realise how many synthetic ingredients were in products that I was using. And so for me, the additional price point is balanced against the benefit to my skin of natural and organic products and ingredients? Is that something that matters to you? So again, when you've kind of put the alternative perspective, ask a question. Is that something that would be an issue for you? Would you prefer to have natural or organic ingredients? Something like that, a question that helps to continue the conversation. It may well be that in the course of the process, you're going to be able to link sell. This is a way of adding products to somebody's order, which obviously to you is more income, if that's a motivator for you. For many of us, we are mission driven. And so the more organic and natural products that we can get into somebody's house, the better. The fact that we earn off that as well is a nice bonus, but it isn't a main motivator. So whatever your motivation is, link selling is good because it is more blue bottles on more shelves in more houses. So the way that you might do that, for instance, if somebody's looking at a facial oil, you might talk about the benefit of exfoliation as well as the treatment that an oil or a serum would give. So I would say something like, and you've got to find what is comfortable for you. Before we make the choice on your oil, I just would say that it would be really worthwhile considering using a facial exfoliator if that's something that you don't already. Do you use a facial exfoliator? And if they say no, you can say, if I just explain a little bit about why that's important, and then explain the benefit of removing the dead skin from the surface, so that your facial oil then is going to be much more able to be effective, because it's going to get past, it's not going to be blocked by any dead skin cells that are on the surface of the skin. All of that's moved out of the way so that your facial oil can do its job and nourish the new fresh cells that are left on your skin. Sorry, Hazel.
I was just going to say, when I used to think about link selling, I'd be like, oh God, I'm selling more stuff. But I actually genuinely really enjoy it now. I think I'm possibly too much of a blue bottle nerd, but I do genuinely enjoy it. And I love being able to it's that kind of thing, isn't it, of sharing the benefits with the customers and just saying to them, if you use this now, then, like you've just said, you will get the extra benefit on your skin. And especially since we've got the hydrating essence as well, I've found that linking that with other facial products has been just quite natural.
I just had one. I didn't find two. I picked it off the line and put it on the chair.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the person who's chatting.
Oh.
There we go. Sorry, Hazel.
That's all right. So especially with things like the hydrating essence, it just makes sense to me. And like you say, so even talking about body products, I would also talk about body exfoliation as well, just to Absolutely. It just makes sense now. And I feel as though I'm offering them the opportunity to get more from their products. And
I think the key thing with link selling is to think, if I was the customer, would I want to be told? Would I want to have those suggestions made? I would, because they just add to my choices and I feel more empowered. Some link selling absolutely lends itself because of our collections. So for instance, if somebody is buying a face wash and is considering a moisturizer, you might say, before you make your choice, can I just show you these 15% off collections that would include the toner as well? And you can just quickly do the sums in your head, can't you? Or you can say, it's saving you 15% to buy the three together, and share the results in that point. So you might say, for lots of customers who want to get going with their skincare routine, this is kind of a good starter pack. So you're kind of sharing the results of other customers in your recommendation. Going back to point number 2. The other thing with link selling is sometimes you've got, it might come a bit later in the process when they've made their choice of products. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because there's another position for link selling as well, but let's just go on. A soft close. So once you've talked loads about all the product and you've gone around the houses and you've listened to lots of information, you want something that begins to bring the conversation to a decision. And this was the one that completely revolutionized my selling. I could engage with people, I could enthuse about the product, and then I didn't want to be pushy, quotes. And so actually, I just hoped that they'd spontaneously and in a self-motivated way just go, right, well, I'm going to order that, that, and that then. And instead, what I got was a slightly awkward vibe. Is that just me, or have other people experienced that? Debs, thanks for nodding. It makes me feel like it's not just me. A soft close will completely change that, and you need to find a phrase that you're completely comfortable with. So that might be something like, so how does that sound on the products that you've chosen? It might be something like, so do you think that product will be good for you? It might be, so what do you think of what I've shown you? Yeah, I like them. I think I'm going to go for that. You're kind of edging them towards a response. And I don't think anybody had told me, because I'd never done any sales training, that that is a really nice stage before the actual close. For goodness sake, close the deal. But it's really difficult to go from the chat to closing the deal in one jump. The soft close is a stepping stone. So if you've used a soft close, like, so how does that sound? Or are those the kind, do you think we've explored the products thoroughly enough for you? Or has that reduced your overwhelm to a few choices, Ruth? That kind of question is a soft close. And if she says, yes, thank you, that has clarified things, or yes, I like the products that you've recommended to me, you can then take charge of the last bit. And as the consultant, it is your responsibility to take charge of it and do the close and say, great, shall I get those ordered for you then? Or
we all need a bit more Rachel, don't we?
Well, yeah, feel free to put those on your order form then, or would you like me to fill it in for you? You know, two choices are good on the close, but actually it stops the customer from feeling so awkward, because you've led them all the way up the garden path and now you're not opening the gate. So rather than being pushy, it actually makes people feel more comfortable. If you think about you being the customer, having had all that conversation, all that input from that positive experience that you went through, and then they just keep talking and they just keep enthusing about the product, and you think, okay, need to go now, my parking is running out, and they don't just close the deal. Great, so shall I put that in a bag for you? So have you decided to go for that one then today, or what? Think about the lines. I mean, listen to it as you're being sold to in the next little while. Hear the soft close if it's a good transaction, and definitely the close sentence. Hopefully I've given you a few suggestions there. You might need to go back and listen to the recording on this if you just want to jot down your own line on that one.
The soft close on my experience at the weekend was, well, shall I put those in an email for you and send you those with the individual costings? I said, yeah, that'd be great.
Nice. And probably they picked up that you were a reflective decider, Ruth, so they're not going to jump in and make you decide there and then.
It's too big, too complex a process to do all at once. So all I wanted was the information and the pricing.
Nice.
Just offered to do it all by email, and I thought, yeah. And then she said, and you can, when you get the email, you can make an appointment and come in and we'll chat about it again.
Nice.
It was lovely.
Nice process. And actually, in the feedback that you guys were giving in the chat at the beginning, the process that I've just put there in those 6 bullet points, many of the things you talked about the positive sales transaction, they featured in the things that you wrote down. So having conversation at the beginning, just chatting, whether that is sharing results from other customers or not, chatting through the objections, just being willing to gently offer an alternative perspective. You know, that's all good. I just want to come back to the link selling there, because if I've got somebody, I'll give you an example. I was doing a gift box last week for a customer of mine, Mandy. She was getting it for her soon-to-be daughter-in-law, and Mandy is a regular customer. So at the point where we were working out what products she wanted in the gift box, I said to her, Mandy, how are you doing with your Defence hand spray? And she went, oh, I'm glad you said that. It's nearly run out. And I said, great, glad I mentioned it. So have you still got the bottle? And she said, yes. And I said, well, then you've got two options. You can buy a new rub, or you can have the refill bottle. Actually, three options, or both. And she said, actually, I'll have the refill, but can I have another bottle as well? Because I'm out and about more now. So I could do with having one in the car. Brilliant. So actually, like that, you've added, what's that? I don't know, another 13 or 14 pounds to your order. The main purpose was to buy her gift box for Charlotte. But actually, that little reminder, sometimes you can say things like, oh, I don't know, Natalie, do you need another hand cream now the weather's turned a bit colder? That, the little everyday lip balm, hand cream, hand wash, those kind of things just all help to just nudge the sales up. If that's a motivator, and if you're motivated by filling the world with blue bottles one at a time, then it does that as well. So whatever your motivation is, link selling is really, really good. Right, so what we've got now, just to round off, I've got some techniques that help the customer. They're good for us to learn because they help the customer. And the first one is warm contact. So this is contact that doesn't necessarily have a sales pitch in it. And this might come in various guises. Social media posts. Rachel Bridges, who is on this call, had a revolutionary moment in the first lockdown because social media posts are warm contact. But Rach really wanted, didn't you, to grow your customer base, actually sell lots of product, get people going, be brave enough to run workshops. And social media posts in themselves don't necessarily deliver that, but what they do is they warm people up. And that was obvious because after we'd had a bit of a coaching call, Rachel flew and was doing over £1,000 in sales on a monthly basis. Her customers were clearly well warmed up. We just needed to slightly change how they were going to be doing their purchasing. So don't stop on your social media posts. It's my thing that I'm gradually building up again and learning new stuff on. This is my learning curve for this particular season, because I know that warm contact and regular input, and also actually little posts that are insight into your life, little connections with you, are all part of them feeling connected with you as the consultant. You want them to feel the relationship with you is strong enough. They know enough about what's going on in your life. They're happy with what you're offering, that they don't go anywhere else for their product. That's the ideal. Other warm contact is conversation and active listening in all sorts of given times. We're going to talk a bit more about follow-up in a minute, but actually just wanted to check in and see how you are after your holiday. That it hasn't got a sales pitch to it. You're not aiming to sell them anything. You're just building the relationship. Active listening, that means that you clock what their children are called, or what their husband's name is, or what their dog's called, or where they've been on holiday. All of those are nice details. And often, if you get that right, people will say, I can't believe you've remembered that. And be a little bit canny. You know, practice your active listening, and then afterwards make a few notes on their record, because you probably won't remember it when you have the conversation in 6 months' time. Other warm contact is lifestyle positioning of products. So even if they're not interested in that product right now, you are showing a life that is filled with Neil Judd Remedies products, and often our branding, imaging begins to do that for us, doesn't it? We've got lifestyle imaging for the new Women's Balanced Body collection. You will get more interest and interaction with your own pictures of those products. So I got a wet arm the other day, just before we went on holiday. I had to take a photograph of a little video of the Women's Balance shower oil under the water running in my shower. Unfortunately, I'd already got dressed and we were literally about to get in the car, and I said, I've got to do this because I'm going to need it in the next few days. Such is my devotion. But because I've committed to sorting out my social media posts, please find it and like it, because, you know, it took a lot of commitment, that post. But actually, a tile that is obviously brand imaged by the company isn't as connected as your shower. I'm not necessarily saying a picture of you in your shower, but just be creative on how you're using the product and how in your life those products fit. Because even if they're not interested in them right away, it's amazing the drip feed of subtle messaging that warm contact brings. Okay, next technique that help the customer is needs and solutions, and we've touched on this a little bit, but you're best matching the needs to the needs that they've expressed, that you've heard through your active listening. So the subtlety here is that, a bit like Hazel was saying, where you reflect back what you've heard. Say, for instance, somebody said, do you know what, in the winter my skin gets so dry, and I think my cleanser makes my skin worse because I just can't get enough moisturizer into it. And you might say something like, right, okay, so as you've said, your skin gets so dry in the winter, I'd really recommend the Calendula cleanser as the cleanser for you for this season. And the reason I'm saying that is because it is full of nourishing oils. It is perfect for dry skin, really easy to use in the shower, and it's, you know, it's that lovely thick creamy texture, and you just might find that that's a bit better than the facial wash you've been using during the summer. So you've verbalized the need, reflecting back what they've said, and then you showed them the solution and why. So I don't know if that is something you want to work on. Put a star on it next to your notes if it is. It also shows that you've listened. So you're basically saying, as you've said, I'd recommend X because that's the little bit that you need to remember as the technique. As you've said, you've got a budget of £20 for this particular Christmas gift that you're buying. I'd recommend these two products because it can be applied to so many situations, but it requires open questions before you start. And then I mentioned it earlier, and I just wanted to come back to it, features and benefits. This is a technique that really helps the customer because it's not what's in the product, but how it might be of benefit to that person. Now, this really frees us up, guys, from knowing all the product ingredients. I think there's a misperception that we can't sell anything until we've learned all the ingredients. Rubbish. So long as you know what a product can do for you, you can sell that product. I'm sure many of you have sold, for instance, Wild Rose Beauty Balm based on infectious enthusiasm. You probably now couldn't list all the essential oils that are in that, let alone what the base balm is made of, but you know what it does. So if you take the Women's Balance blend, I can tell you that it's got patchouli and geranium and rose and frankincense in it. Now, unless you're a qualified aromatherapist, that probably doesn't help you. So me learning all those essential oils doesn't help. If I tell you that it helps to calm and balance emotional imbalance and, well, calm and balance your emotions, and it's also really good if you're stressy or anxious, I've told you how it can benefit you. And usually the response to features and benefits is, oh my goodness, I need that in my life. And the great thing is that if you tell them the features and benefits and you've got a stickler for the detail who wants to know what particular essential oils help to calm and balance your emotions or stop you feeling stressy or anxious, you can always go and look it up on your replicated website. That doesn't make you a good salesperson, does it? And it doesn't sell the product to the person, it just gives them a list of ingredients. So features and benefits. Another element of sales is ongoing sales. Absolutely follow up a while after ordering. So when you've had workshops, stick it in your diary for 3 weeks hence, that you're going to do some follow-up contact with those people. Not necessarily a call. It might be little WhatsApp messages. It might be a message into the WhatsApp group if you've had a group of friends together. Why 3 weeks? Well, because it gives you a week or so to get it ordered, and it gives them a couple of weeks to have started using the product. So if they've started using them, the enthusiasm is probably still fairly high. You might get people saying, oh, I haven't started mine yet because I wanted to use up my old stuff first. That's fine. There will be some that are messy, but definitely following up a while after ordering. And then in the individual connection with people after the sale, what you want to do is establish that person, take them from a one-off customer to an ongoing customer. Not everybody will, but that's okay, because we're going for optimism. So some will, and we'll move on from the ones that don't. So the key element is to find out what contact is best from here for that particular individual person. And so if it's helpful to know, I have WhatsApp broadcast lists, I have a Facebook group, and I have an email list for customers. So when I'm communicating, for instance, the launch of the Women's Balance, I do that in all three of those channels because different people have told me they want different forms of communication. Ongoing customers are more likely to connect with you if you've asked them already how they want you to contact them. And then I would say absolutely set the expectation for them on what that's going to look like. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. So then you can stay in touch in the way that they've said they want you to. So I usually sell to people the different formats. I say WhatsApp is a much more instant way that I can tell you of offers that are going on. People tend to respond to messages of workshops that I'm running. Email, I tend to use a bit less often, but because I use WhatsApp broadcast list, any response you give me only comes back to a conversation with me. If you want interaction with other customers, then I would suggest the Facebook group. So do you see how I'm explaining the different forms and the kind of features and benefits of each of those particular groups? And as well as that group communication, I would also say ongoing sales are really affected by some personal contact. So whenever possible, you know, if somebody sends a message in your Facebook group and comments, you might just want to start a little conversation in Messenger with them. Lovely to hear from you. Thanks for your comment. How was your holiday? So you're not just interacting about the, you know, within the chat that's going on there, you're interacting with them individually as well. People love to be noticed. Promoting bundles and offers. So I think this is an interesting one. And I think, again, it's about the positioning. So help customers to understand the plan. So you might say to them, you know, when they agree to be added to your communication, just tell them that you want to do a good job and let them know about everything that is available. So you can say it's a fast and furious business. There are often promotional bundles that are available, or there are new product launches, as well as my own workshops that I'm running. And so what I say to people is, if you've got a question or you want to make a purchase, then respond, and please feel free on the things that don't press your buttons to completely ignore it. And that gives them permission to interact with as much or as little as they like. If you're using a broadcast list on, oh, sorry, just go back one. If you're using a broadcast list for your WhatsApp group, I always explain to people as well that when they, so I say to them on my broadcast list, I send out the information, say for instance on a workshop that I'm running, and it goes out to everybody who's in that list. But if you reply to me, it only comes back to me and into the thread of our conversation. And the reason I do that is because it does everybody's heads in if we're in a group and we can see each other's posts and the phone's pinging every 2 minutes. And that usually raises a laugh because it speaks into the thing that people are reluctant to be part of. For more interaction with other customers, that's what Facebook is for. So that way they know the conversation with you is private, as is their number. And for some people who are GDPR savvy, they don't want their number being available to other people in a WhatsApp group. So broadcast list is reassuring to them. So first of all, with promoting bundles and offers, help customers to understand that there'll be lots out there. They can take what they like and ignore the rest. When a bundle or an offer comes out, and you need to make notes on this, guys. I know it's getting late now, but you need to make notes because there's a new one coming in the morning. So the second thing to do, once you've established with people what communication they want and they understand the plan, is when something is launched, you get the word out there on all the communication platforms that you use. So be careful that you don't miss one off. That has happened as well. The next stage, once you've got the word out there, is over the course of the next bit of time, different for different things, don't assume that people have seen the generic posting. So then is the time to filter to some individual customers who might be interested. That might be because it relates to a particular product that they're crazy about. It might be a range that they particularly use. It might be a workshop that you had a conversation with them about, and you might say, did you see my post? I'd love you to be there. It's the one we were talking about the other day when I called in with your order. Anything specific like that, that just homes in on individual contact with people. And that's where having your customer list that I recommended that you got up to date over the summer is so helpful, because you can actually run your eye down your customer list and think, right, who else might I just need to ping a little message to? You won't be able to hold all that information in your head unless you've got efficient customer records. And then with that particular bundle, you can repost as many times as you need to. With things like the Women's Balance, that could be several times, where you're highlighting the individual features and benefits of individual products. It might be the savings on bundles. It might be the lifestyle positioning, like I said about the shower oil and stuff that I did. I've so far only highlighted the body cream and the shower oil. So take your time. That's where the ongoing messaging about a new range or a bundle or an offer can just be spread out. And I find it really helpful to do that in my diary. So I make a list of the different communications that I want to do, and then I just put dates on them so that I know where my messaging's going. It just helps to kind of keep you on track. Okay, so to finish off, we've had a good long session. What I'd love you to do is to put into the chat a particular nugget for you that you're gonna, that is the thing for me, that's my takeaway for tonight. My action that I'm going to implement in my business, or a light on moment about yourself and the way that you work in your sales. And I'd love one from each of you who's attended tonight. I've got my reasons for that. Just to put into the chat something that you're going to take away from what we've talked about. I'll give you a minute to think that through and just reflect on your notes. Okay, so Tanya, gathering customer reviews and using them. Okay, broadcast list, Rach, that's good. Overcoming objections, soft close and optimism. Thank you, Donna. Marie, broadcast list and collect customer feedback. Great. Handling objections, Ruth, without letting them close the conversation down. Nice. Must follow up on contacts, Penny. Great. The takeaway is selling is a conversation. Yes. Come a long way from where I started as a consultant. Should have more confidence in my selling ability. Definitely need to work on my follow-up. Love that, Hazel. It's nice to celebrate the good stuff, isn't it? Broadcast lists and trying to link sell more without feeling like I'm pushing more products on the customers. Yeah, that's good, Natalie. Getting over objections. Awesome. Well, another reason for asking you to put these into the chat, and I would say, you know, don't just write one in the chat because that's what I've asked you for. Take some time to reread your notes and think, right, what is my action? out of tonight, because actually coming on a sales skills training doesn't improve your sales skills. Taking your actions and applying them with practice, like we said at the beginning, the things that you're good at in life, that is what will change your sales skills. And I'm absolutely certain that when we start implementing the things that we're taking away as our nuggets tonight, we will see a difference in our sales and in our promotion of blue bottles one at a time into lots and lots of households. So I'm going to be keeping tabs on that. I'm actually going to have a look over the course of the next few months. For those of you who attended this live, it would be really lovely to see the impact on your sales develop, wouldn't it? So applying your growth mindset and your optimism, think, right, okay, I'm going to throw myself into this and think of myself as a seller and get out there and do the things that I have put down on my action list. And I would love you to feed some stuff back as well. If you just have an individual conversation with a customer where you tried a couple of things and it went better, or you implemented a particular technique that I've talked about tonight, let me know. I'd love to know the impact of it. And what I'd also love you to do is when I post the recording of the session tonight in the team page, I would love you to put your takeaway nuggets into the comments below that post, because what you'll be doing is selling this training to the people who weren't able to attend, who will now be smiling because they'll have watched the recording. But I just think, you know, we don't just gather customer testimonials, do we? We gather consultant testimonials. So please, will you like it? And then put your nugget of how you're going to change your sales technique as a result of tonight in the conversation. All right. So let me stop the recording. Where is it? Stop the share for a start.